failures that I've had have been because I haven't had the right people around me, or our business hasn't had the right infrastructure, like human capital. For me, it's just good people around you that you can trust is something that you really, really need. And, you can't do it on your own. Like, it's really hard to run a business on your own. It's really hard to be an entrepreneur on your own.
Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shae and Scott. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. It's like the questions of 2024 are, what are rates going to do? What impact is that going to have on purchasing real estate? And how do I purchase abroad? Constantly, I get asked these questions, and I thought today I would bring on a good friend of mine who I've also worked with for over 20 years, which is pretty crazy, to come on and talk some life and amazing work balance and life lessons, but also answer some of these questions for you. So without further ado, I am bringing on Scott Westlake, who is a licensed mortgage broker and has been in the mortgage industry for over a decade. And he has personally originated over $1 billion in mortgages. Scott is known for providing mortgage solutions for a lot of different types of clients, but has a reputation as a specialist in financing, purchases, luxury real estate, construction, mortgages, private lending, and creative lending solutions for high net worth clients. Scott Westlake is the founder of the Westlake Team, which has over 400 mortgage agents across Canada, and he has coached hundreds more in how to finance luxury real estate, business development, business planning, and lead generation. I think today you're going to love this conversation. Maybe even grab a notepad and jot a few things down. Okay, joining today on the Freedom CEO podcast is a longtime friend of mine, kind of like high school days, Scott Westlake. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This should be fun.
So obviously I've known you for a long time, and there's a lot of things about you in business that I do know. For, I guess, people connecting today and learning who you are that might not know you, share with us a little bit, like, who is Scott Westlake? What are you up to? And then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, kind of in a professional capacity, a lot of people have thought of me like over the years as a mortgage broker. I mean, that's something I've been lending money and being in the mortgage and lending space has been something I've been doing for the last 16, 17 years, right? But, I consider myself a little bit more of an entrepreneur. I'm involved in a few different businesses and a few different activities, and like lending money and brokering is one of them. It's one area that I'm, extremely fortunate that I got into at a pretty young age. It's allowed me to have a pretty interesting intake into like real estate and into, relationship building and sales and discipline. There's a whole bunch of stuff that comes along with commission sales and being involved in the mortgage space that we can dive into more. But like as a person, that journey's ebbed and flowed. I worked at, a big bank early in my career, which gave me a brand that was great to help me build some relationships and foster some relationships when I was younger and I didn't have the experiences that I have now. And so that was a really good opportunity to build some relationships that I still have, right? A lot of those relationships I still have. And that's a really fulfilling part of these businesses when you can have these, like we have like these 15 plus 20-year relationships. That's on the personal side, I think, really important as you get older. But I started off at a bank. opened up a mortgage brokerage with some friends when I thought that was the right time, because we wanted to get into more creative lending. We wanted to take over the world. We wanted to hire, all kinds of agents and empower other brokers to kind of, share in some of the successes we had at the bank. But we were a little naive, not knowing what we didn't know going into it. So we had some big highs and we had some, really big lows, all relationships that I hold to this day, that I'm really proud of. But that business, kind of like fizzled out probably 4 or 5 years after giving it a really good go. And it wasn't because it wasn't successful. It was just because we all changed as people, right? We were single when we started this company and living in the city, downtown Toronto. And then over time, we had families and children and moved into different geographical locations. And so from a business perspective, that was challenging. And so I opened up a mortgage brokerage in Oakville, which is, in a way how we connected, and having some family friends through your father and my parents. And that was like a really fun and proud moment for me. I grew up in Oakville for a big part of my life. It's a place that, has afforded me a lot of opportunities, a lot of relationships, a lot of great small businesses in this community, a lot of charitable initiatives, a lot of giving back. And so when I was able to open up something in my neighborhood, a place that has treated me really well, that was a really fulfilling moment for me, because I was able to, service those businesses and service those clients and build those relationships. And it's an area where, anyone that lives kind of around me knows, like, I'm always walking around with the dog and the kids, and I'm pretty engaged in the community. And so today, I'm a part of one of the largest, brokerages in the country. We have 400 mortgage brokers and agents on our team, primarily across the GTA, which I'm strategically involved in helping groom, like, get the next generation of mortgage brokers, I guess, is a corny way of thinking about that. I'm actively doing deals. I typically, now, this has changed over time, but I do a lot like in the high net worth space, in the kind of more complicated financing scenario space, if you may, for lack of better terms. I'm a bit of a problem solver. We've talked about how we've opened up an office in Naples and are doing work in the United States. And so our business, has changed a lot. And then, in parallel to that, I started a digital magazine, Fun Magazine, which is for, it's not really meant to be a magazine. It's a marketing tool for mortgage brokers. It's an opportunity for other mortgage brokers to, I think, connect with the community and local businesses and, prospect and find new relationships and reward existing relationships. So that's kind of something on the side, but it's a fun one because it's the creative side of the brain as opposed to the analytical. So anyways, that's a crazy, weird, like, long introduction, but mortgage broker, entrepreneur, just try to get back to the community and help out and make some money and have some fun. That's it.
I love it. Well, and it has been a super long journey. There's a lot of stuff that you've done over the last, call it like 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about this earlier because I've always known you to have this entrepreneurial spirit of like wanting to create, wanting to build. And what I find is unique, and I wanted to ask you about this, that you and I have actually never had this conversation before, is when you're in an industry where you're working at a bank, typically that's not an entrepreneurial environment, right? Like, that's a corporate environment, and you work your way up and you climb the corporate ladder. But you and a handful of the other mortgage specialists, and Scott was my mortgage specialist back in the day when he was at the bank there. And obviously we still do business together now. But what was it, like, what idea or like where was that in you to go, I'm going to take something that's actually corporate and that not a lot of people ever do in their career as a mortgage specialist, and actually create a business out of that?
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating. And I've never thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, right? I mean, I think that a part of that is, innate. Like, I just always had this idea of doing something that allowed me to have a little bit more like personal freedom. It kind of goes in well with this podcast, but I always have been pulled towards creating my own schedule, being able to do what I want to do. Like, that's always just been like a fire in my stomach. I don't like it when I'm getting pulled in too many directions outside of my control. I've just always had this like thought process and an innate ability I guess you'd say, to kind of like find ways to kind of do what I'm passionate about. And that was just something that was really important to me. So that was in the background, right? Like that was in the background. I had to make money. I was playing hockey at school, and I was looking for something competitive to do. So like commission sales was a really nice like segue after being in a competitive sport where you get to kind of like track sales and, compete against your peers in a way. And I needed that. Like that was something just that drove me, was that competitive nature from sport that led me into commission sales. But then at the same token, it was that freedom of creating your own schedule and doing what you wanted. And so part of it was like a personal decision that I wanted to, probably not just be in one business for my whole life, but kind of bounce around a little bit and try to see where I might have some success and failures. And there's been a lot of success, but there's also been a lot of failure as well, right? And that's kind of part of the entrepreneurial journey. But a lot of it is like some like timing and luck as well, right? Like when I started to do some of the businesses that have failed and succeeded, it was when I was like younger. A lot of them I got involved in when I was younger. And I didn't have as much responsibility. I could take that risk. And so it was a really good time in my life. And I was fortunate enough that I was also financially doing well enough in my kind of commission sales that if I was pivoting and I made some mistakes, I could always kind of go back to what I did. I always just assumed I was employable and I'd find another job. And so just kind of having that thought process in the back of my mind, knowing that, I could go back the corporate ladder if I wanted to, allowed me to go the entrepreneur route. And then I've never really looked back. And all that's changed as I've gotten older is that now I have a little bit more, financial and mental freedom to like dive into things that I'm super interested in that I maybe would not have taken the risks earlier on. So it's just it's a bit of a timing and personal feeling, right? But it's kind of hard to explain, your journey and the ups and downs. But it's really just, I think for anybody, just doing what you're passionate about to some degree, assuming that you can pull that off, right? Not everybody can. And that's what I think is unfortunate, is a lot of people would like to do different things, but they maybe they can't, or they don't think they can, right?
Well, I would say that what you just said is typically the main reason, right? Like whether you think you can or you can't, you're correct. Yeah. And so if you already have that predisposition mindset that you're not able to, you won't be successful, it won't work out, you're probably right. Like that's what you're going to manifest, and whatever you focus on expands, and that's what you're going to call in. Yeah. So, and I always saw, yes, like I definitely think, and one of my questions even with you around sport is you always have had this like competitive nature and just like kind of not giving a fuck and just going after it. And if it messes up, like, oh, well, and you'll just keep going forward and doing something else. Do you think that if you were not in sport the way that you were, do you think you would have had that same, I guess, like the tenacity or like the stamina and also like that drive? Like, do you feel like sport shaped that for you?
Yeah, I think sport is one thing that can be like, so for me, like sport's very influential, and like the people you surround yourself with are also very influential. So I think you could kind of, get that thought process and tenacity from either or. With sport, it's great because you're doing it and you're living in it. Like, I picked up tennis like super late, like in the last 2 years of my life, and I'm absolutely obsessed. And I like play in our club championships, and I don't like, I'm doing well in it, but like I have that same personality that if I lose, it's frustrating, but I kind of pivot and I try harder again. And it's kind of like filling a void that I haven't had in years, where I wanted to get involved in something competitive. And I do agree that a lot of that comes from my drive, just even as a child, like getting involved in sport. But I also think like people and who you surround yourself is important too. I have a lot of like good mentors and peers in my life that I look up to that have like a drive, and they maybe didn't play sport. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I have a brother, who has, a disability and was able to accomplish a ton in his life. And so that is one thing that drives some inspiration for me, like the teammates and people that he surrounds himself with. I can kind of like draw on that as well. So even if I wasn't playing sport, I have some people like that in my life. And then other, figures and business people that I'm like, they work so hard, or they have such like this personality that I'm drawn to, or that I'm just like very, very curious about. So I agree with you. I think sport's a big proponent of that drive, but I think there's a few other factors that are in there as well.
So, okay, let me ask you, like, I'm going to go back to your kind of early days. You're at the bank. You have this idea of wanting to create more freedom in your life, as you mentioned, kind of be more in control of your own schedule. When you think of the people that you'd be serving, or like the industry of lending, mortgages, etc., was there a void or an issue that you said, like, if we were to go out and do this and create something outside of a traditional bank, it would be better, or you'd be
Yeah.
solving a problem that maybe the bank wasn't servicing?
Yeah, like I think at first it wasn't. At first it was just like, okay, I need a good job, right? I need a job and I need to make money. And then there was the commission side of it that was like that kind of like that innate like competitive nature, wanting to be involved in like being the best at something. That was what started everything. But then over time, and when we ended up leaving the bank and creating our own company, and then like how that's kind of ebbed and flowed up into this point, a lot of it has been with regards to filling gaps in the marketplace. Like that's absolutely correct, right? When you can fill a gap, I think that, and you create a need for other people, you have a lot higher probability of having success, which is why we got into, helping clients that are business for self, for example. That's like a very underserviced market in Canada. Is a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's a challenging and complicated market, and they deserve the ability to get financing, construction financing, like land acquisition, construction, major home renovation, like very complicated, very tricky. Again, like very underserviced, and we do a great job at it. Even in the high net worth space, which is where I spend a lot of my time, it's not like an underserviced market, but their needs are complex in nature, and you just would assume that their private banker or the bank that they work with would be the solution, but that isn't always the case. Like there are other products and services that we have access to that are unique and can help serve that populace as well. I picture like, cottage country, rural properties, Canadians that have been buying in the US. Like there's a lot of these niche programs out there that we think are underserviced. And those are the areas that we love to spend our time, right? We're helping someone out. We become the expert and professional in that area. And yeah, absolutely. Like filling gaps in the marketplace, I think is a really, really good way to have success in any industry.
So, Scott, when you think of all your years in business, being an entrepreneur, opening things up, exiting, being an investor,
Yeah.
for you, what would you say is one of the biggest lessons you've learned in business?
It's an amazing question. I think I could probably answer it like with a lot of different answers. But if I was to pick like one that always seems to be top of mind, it's just the importance of relationships, right? Which is fun and amazing, but it's something that is harder than you would think to be good at, right? Like like building strong quality relationships, surrounding yourself with the right people, people that you can trust in a personal and or professional atmosphere. Like failures that I've had have been because I haven't had the right people around me, or our business hasn't had the right infrastructure, like human capital. And so, for me, it's just good people around you that you can trust is something that you really, really need. And, you can't do it on your own, right? Like it's really hard to run a business on your own. It's really hard to be an entrepreneur on your own. Even if you're doing something that you think is like very independent in nature, you're going to need to reach out to others. And I think to have success, if you can surround yourself with the right individuals and find those quality relationships, that's where I think you can find a lot of success. And what I have learned, the hard way at times, over my career, where I need to invest my time and be better at. And so that's what I really care about now, right? Which is why when I was talking about how we did this like fun magazine, we got into this other business. It's focused on relationships and community, charitable organizations, like things that you're passionate about. And it's kind of deviating a little bit away from like social media and like immediate gratification and like quick hits, which can certainly be a part of anyone's business and makes a lot of sense for a lot of businesses. But there's this underlying kind of need in the businesses that I get engaged with that have to have really good people that you can trust, or it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so let me play devil's advocate just a little bit on this.
Sure.
Because, I don't disagree with you at all in what you say. And obviously, like I'm in the people business of relationships. And so that's obviously of huge importance. But I think about people who are maybe listening to this that are either maybe in corporate, maybe thinking about starting a business.
Okay.
Maybe they're looking to grow their business right now. And when you talk about expanding your network, right? And that's where you say that your network defines your net worth. And that's kind of to summarize what you just said.
Sure.
I think about the practical things, like it's easy to say surround yourself with good people. And then there's people that will go, well, like, where are those people? Like, how do I get in those rooms? How do I get in those circles? How do I get to like connect with maybe somebody like Scott Westlake? And so, you were a young buck once and, you've had to kind of finagle your way into some of these rooms and circles. So what would be some practical advice that you would give to somebody around that?
Well, no, I agree with you completely. Like, you can't just have a goal, right? Like when people are like, I want to have more money. I want to have a bigger network. I want to meet more people. I want to leave my corporate job. I mean, that's part of it. Like the thought process and like, how you, like the idea of where you want to go and what you want to do is important, right? But you got to have a plan, right? And you have to have something that you can wake up and execute on like a regular basis and build some sort of routines, right? Or you're never going to, reach those goals, right? So when I'm talking about like surrounding yourself with the right people and building the network, I mean, obviously, like I think they need to be genuine, but whether you're leaving like a corporate job or you're getting into a new industry, I think it's just reaching out, being comfortable to do what I consider reach outs. It's something we teach, agents on our team all the time is it's a combination of two things, like reaching out to new people that like maybe you feel like you could have some form of relationship with. It may be connecting with your already existing inner circle. Like we all have friends and family that can make, key introductions to people that are either influential or maybe can give you some different perspective. And then there's also like your existing kind of network of just like continually like cultivating and working with them to make sure that they're okay and see how you can help them. Like I was taught from one of my mentors that, the best way to grow your network and the best way to grow your business is by figuring out how you can help other people's businesses, right? And when you are coming from a position of giving as opposed to receiving, which as corny as it may sound, it really was influential in my career because it was so easy for me to just take, right? It was like, we need business, like give it to us and we'll fund it. And we were transactional, right? But that only took us so far and that works for a little bit of time. But then, we had to implement, a way to give back and support others to kind of like really, truly, genuinely grow that business. So I think that, if someone is thinking about like just how do they build their network, they really got to start like within figuring out like who they want to connect with and how they want to reach out to them. I had a professional hockey player that just retired recently asked me for a coffee, and we kind of know each other, it's just kind of like in the neighborhood type thing. And I had no clue what he wanted to meet about. And we had a coffee, we were chatting, and he was just trying to figure out like, how do I transition from pro athlete to the next stage of my life, right? Like, what am I going to do for the next 30, 40 years? And what am I passionate about? What's going to make me happy and things of that nature. And we sat down and he got my name from someone else that he had a coffee with and just said, hey, you live in Oakville, Scott lives in Oakville, you guys should connect. And we connected and had like a really nice conversation. And, that was his beginning of a journey of building his new network, which prior to that was all, athletes that are all over the world right now. And he was in Europe and overseas and has a very small network in this area, right? So I think that you need to have like a goal of something that you want to do, but then you have to have some practicality in terms of like, what can you do each and every single day? What can you rinse and repeat to actually execute on that goal,
I love that. And I really love that you also shared the importance of like, how can you show up and add value to the person that you're maybe wanting to get in that room with or that door or learn something from, that it's not all about the take and what you can get out of something, but like, how can you show up and serve and add value to that new group of people? Is super important.
One of my best referral partners yesterday called me, and I love this person for how they operate. They just called me out of the blue. I answer the phone and he says, hey, Scott, he's like, I met two people today that you got to meet. They're fantastic. He's like, they're just great people. You got to meet them. Like you'll figure out ways to do work together. Like whatever. He's just like, they're great people. You got to meet them. And I was like, okay, like, where do we take this? And he's like, don't worry. I'll give them your name. If they don't follow up, here's their names. Let me know. you guys got to connect. And he's had tremendous success as a business mentor of mine. And when I got off the phone, I was like, that is why he's successful. He wasn't calling, asking me for business. He wasn't asking me for anything. He just was like, I met someone that you need to meet and I want you to know. But he does that every day to all different types of people. And everyone is like, this person is so amazing. And he's genuinely just trying to connect other people. That's part of his like what makes him happy, but also part of his business plan. And he executes it great. And he gets a lot of business from that. And it's intentional, but unintentional, which is like a nice way to operate. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I got to do more of that. Like that was just like a really, genuine call. It had a purpose, but he was like, hey, I want to help you out. You're a friend of mine. And that's it.
And like, how fun does that actually get to be? Like that, that's like the fun in business, your relationship building, you're connecting, you're meeting new people. And just for the sake of you're good people, and good people should know other good people. And if something comes out of it, it comes out of it. And if not, then it doesn't. But at least like a new good connection is made.
It's the best part about being an entrepreneur is like you meet so many different people, and you meet so many people with different personalities and people that you didn't think that you would maybe resonate with. And if you're able to step outside your comfort zone and just kind of say, hey, like, I'm just going to take this meeting or phone call and kind of do it on a whim and just have some fun with it, you just meet some like really, really quality people. And I mean, that's kind of what I feel like a lot of people are looking for, especially coming out of like, the pandemic and that whole craziness where so many people became a little introverted and didn't get to, be as social as they wanted to be at times, right? It's like, I feel like there's this need for people to like have these like human connections and interactions. And it's such a fun way to do business when you're working with really good people, which is why I mentioned like this whole, like, working with people that you can trust and build relationships with. It's just a really fun way to go about, any type of business and career and sharing it with other people, right? It's super important to me.
No, it's gold, actually. Like I very much agree with that. So conversations like this just light me up. And I hope you're loving today's episode too. My friend, can I ask a quick favor of you? Could you please hit the subscribe or follow button? You have no idea how much that helps this show grow, so discussions like this can reach others as well. And if you want to go the extra mile, please leave a review. Your thoughts and feedback mean so much to me. After all, this show is created for you. Okay, that's it. Let's get back to it. So Scott, let's just like shift a little bit because we're in a kind of a bizarre year. We're also in bizarre weather. Like me being in real estate, you in the lending space, it's starting to function a little more like spring market right now because it's not as cold. There's not really snow on the ground. And, my people know, as do you, that I took off a couple of years ago. I sold one of my places in Toronto, bought some stuff down in Costa Rica, and doing real estate down there, living down there. And so I get tons of questions around how can I purchase in Costa Rica? How can I purchase in Mexico as a Canadian or even in Florida, right? Like that's been kind of the buzzword is like Costa Rica, Mexico, Florida, or Texas. That's kind of what everybody wants to know. And so I think that sometimes it can be very complicated. It doesn't need to be, but circumstances for some people is that way. And for those of you guys who don't know Scott and you're meeting him for the first time, whether you're watching or you're tuning in, listening, Scott has heard me say this probably for 20 years, that who he is in the lending space around the easy, basic, like first time home buyer, I need an approval done, to, as Scott mentioned earlier, like high net worth clients with very complicated, complex portfolios that don't always get the ease of traditional banking that you might assume that they just would. I always say about Scott, if anybody can get it done in the country, it's going to be this guy. And if it can't get done, if Scott comes back and says it can't get done, then you just should stop looking because like it can't get done. Like, I always find you're like the unicorn, problem fixer, creative, outside of the box, the lender, and talk about the relationship guy. Part of why your secret sauce, I know, is of being able to get these things done is because you actually have relationships in so many different areas and avenues, and you've built that trust that if you bring a complicated file, you have that relationship, you have that trust with the person on the other side to say, I know this is risky. I know this doesn't maybe look that great, but this is the relationship I also have with the people on the other side of the paper, you know? And so Scott's this guy that if it can get done, he's going to get it done. As you shared earlier, and like no pressure, but like as you shared earlier too, you guys are now open in Naples, Florida, and you're doing cross-border. So I really wanted to bring this value to people through you around, this is a weird market. There's a lot of uncertainty around rates. What's the impact going to be for Canadians? I'd love to tap into some of that with you, but then also like, what if I want to purchase outside of Canada, you know, what does that look like? And what are some of my options available that maybe like I don't know about right now?
Yeah, I mean, so touching on the marketplace, right? I mean, so like that part is like, yeah, we're in a higher interest rate market. You know, our chief economist, her name's Dr. Shae Cooper, who I think is brilliant and has a lot of really good commentary on the Canadian economy, bond yields, interest rates, you know, how Canadians are impacted you know, by government policy and lender policy and things of that nature, you know, is suggesting that interest rates are coming down anywhere from 150 to 200 basis points, so 1.5% to 2%, you know, somewhere between, you know, 2024 and the end of 2025, which is great. Like that's exciting news for Canadians. I think everyone got used to some really low interest rates during COVID, which you know, was used to help stimulate the economy in one way, but it also created some problems, right? And so now we have like a pretty inflationary marketplace. Everything is expensive, including interest rates, and that's caused its own problems for borrowers, for businesses, and things of that nature. And so, you know, I've always been like a big proponent for cash flow. So just when you get into like the marketplace and interest rates, it's like if you can afford the cash flow, you know, regardless of the interest rate, like you're in a good position. And naturally, when rates are lower, you're in a lot better position, and you can hammer away principal. And there's all kinds of strategies to, you know, reduce debt. And, you know, when interest rates go up, you've already planned for that because you've got the cash flow, and maybe you're not paying down as much principal, but you went into the process of purchasing real estate and affording real estate from a cash flow perspective, which is the way that I like to go into most transactions. Not just like how much can you get approved for. I mean, that's important, and that's what everyone wants to know. They're like, what's the best interest rate? And they're like, how much do I qualify for? And then it's like, can I push that, right? How do we push that? And especially in a market where, you know, real estate's expensive and rates are high, everyone wants to push that to see how much we can give them, right? And we can do that, and we do that, but it's also a little dangerous, right? I think we really want to go into it from a cash flow perspective, because then we're setting our customers up for success. So just in terms of the market, it is a little complicated. You know the real estate side better than most. I mean, I think there's a lot of interest in the air. We've had, you know, a warm winter. You know, there's not snow on the ground, at least around here right now. You've got economists talking about rates coming down. So, you know, you've got interest in the marketplace. Pre-approvals are going up, credit pulls are going up. There's a lot of indicators that consumers are looking to buy real estate, and there's a supply and demand issue, as most people know. And Canadians like owning real estate. A lot of people, including most that I know, have generated a lot of their wealth through real estate and the equity they've built up by properties appreciating and debt being paid down, right? So you know, we're hoping that, you know, rates come down. We're hoping that, you know, real estate becomes affordable, and we want to help get more people into homes. Like that's kind of what we do. In terms of, you know, USA lending and those creative, you know, solutions we come up with, that just came out of, you know, a need for a lot of people that we do business with, you know, purchasing in the United States, looking at areas in the US for a combination of like personal usage, but also from an investment perspective, right? And there's some decent programs at major financial institutions right now that can help Canadians, but there's also a lot of gaps in that process, and that's where we kind of have come in. We've got partners we work with in the US. We understand the US lending. We understand the Canadian lending. we can pull that together. We can come up with some pretty special programs. So not only can we do business across all of Canada, you have to be licensed in every province to do business in. You can't just have an Ontario license and do a deal, for example, in Vancouver or Halifax. You need to be licensed. So we're interprovincially licensed all across Canada. And then we also have access to lending solutions, both residentially and commercially across the United States. So we're kind of covered in North America in terms of lending. In places like Costa Rica and these other, fun destinations that everyone loves to travel to, it's a little bit more complicated from a lending perspective. The majority of the credit solutions that we provide are finding equity in existing real estate in Canada, right? So maybe tapping into your equity, maybe giving you a home equity line of credit, looking at what you have in Canada, help you create the capacity to purchase in a geographical location that maybe just isn't at that point where we can put a credit facility in place, just for numerous different reasons, mainly like underwriting and securitization. But that may come. But for a lot of people that are purchasing these like secondary properties, it usually isn't just like, hey, I'm moving to Costa Rica and this is my only asset. A lot of the time they have assets in Canada, and there's other creative ways to help them come up with the capital to purchase that property. So yeah, just like you said, like if there's a problem, we try to solve it. And after many people buying in the US and abroad and not being able to get the financing they need, that's where we've kind of come in and said, yeah, let's create a program, let's create a solution, and let's help, right? And it kind of goes back to the relationship side of things. Like a lot of this has to do with knowing the lenders and investing time with them and understanding their policies and talking to them and pushing for new product and services, right? And letting them know what customers and Canadians want. And so if you kind of get into this business or any entrepreneurial venture, it's really important to have those key relationships in mind, that you need to build relationships with the key players in the industry, be it competitors, be it partners. You need to know what's happening if you want to help your target demographic long term.
And because I advise this to my clients, and so I'm just curious for you, like, would you tell people that they should go and get, 2 or 3 approvals and opinions when they're looking for a lender?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't need to, right? Like when we're working with clients, we would prefer it if we were the exclusive provider, because we have right now, I think we've got disclosure rules that we have to disclose how many lenders that we work with in the previous fiscal year. And I think we're at 143, right? So that's big banks, credit unions, monoline lenders, trust companies, alternative capital, private capital. If you put all that into one basket, it's 143 lenders. So we're pretty representative of the entire marketplace. There are some lenders that aren't in the broker channel. So there may be a scenario where they say, hey, I'm working with this lender and we don't work with them. And they'll get a quote or get some terms from that institution. And then we're kind of going to represent the other 143. And there's no real need to go further than that. I would say that the majority of clients we work with, or a lot of them, it's again a bit of a relationship. Like there's a trust, there's an inherent trust. We get introduced. They know that we can underwrite well. We can communicate properly. We're going to get them what they need, and we know how to figure out the right terms for our customers. And so a lot of our clients are just like, we're going to work with you, just get it done, right? And we love those clients, but there's other ones that have a different perspective, right? And they want to make sure that they get some different opinions and perspectives, and that's fine as well too, right? We'll come to the table and compete with anyone for business, and we're happy to compete. Sometimes though, you can create more problems by having additional credit pulls, by maybe having conflicting information. Like one institution has one piece of information, then you explained it differently to another institution, or you could have multiple brokers working with the same lender and that information didn't come across perfectly, and it can end up like hurting a customer, not always helping them. So it's a fine line between like just doing what you believe is the right way to go about obtaining financing and talking to the right people, and also not like putting yourself in a position where you might be hurting yourself, right? So it's open to interpretation, but I think if you have a good broker, then they're going to be representative of the majority of the marketplace. Or if you work with a bank you trust and they're giving you the service you need, that's great as well too, right? We're very open to people operating in a way that makes sense for them.
So quick question, because as you're talking, you're talking like sometimes the negative effect that you have more than one or two lenders like pulling your credit, that obviously can have a negative impact when it's pulled too many times. And it started making me think about credit. And if somebody has like a lower credit score, what are some of the things that they're able to actually do maybe prior to going to somebody like yourself to get an approval that will help to enhance or correct and bump up their credit score?
Yeah, like credit just in general, there's a lot of different things that impact credit, from like how much credit you have to the utilization to the repayment and things of that nature. And so a lot of it is just common sense. Some people think having no credit is a good thing. That's the opposite. Like, you do want to have credit. You need to establish, a credit history. You need to establish a history of repayment and professional use for lenders to get comfortable with who you are as a consumer and how you interact with other credit facilities. So you do want to have credit. There's nothing wrong with having access to lines of credit or access to credit cards or having multiple products, but it comes down to how do you utilize those products, right? And do you make the payments on time? Really, if you can, from just a very, very basic, without getting overly analytical on it, it's just, how do you maintain those products when you have them? And making payments is naturally the biggest and best one. I normally recommend for people, there's a lot of good credit reporting companies out there that are free and or paid for. I think Where a lot of credit problems come from is just not understanding the repayment, or maybe missing something. Like, it's easy to miss parking tickets or cell phone payments, or canceling with one provider and then maybe it didn't get closed out properly. So there's like minor challenges like that pop up, that if that can just be brought to your attention quick, you can then address it. And that's going to have maybe like an immediate blimp that doesn't impact your ability to get a mortgage, but it could long-term if you don't address it. So I think, for someone that already has established credit, like either getting a pre-approval to make sure that like their bank or broker can kind of take a look at it and just make sure it's where it needs to be, and then help address any problems is important. If you can do some sort of credit monitoring, that's also a really good benefit as well, right? But when we look at credit, if we think there's something that needs to be fixed or addressed, we'll let our clients know. And if it's a massive problem like a bankruptcy or consumer proposal, then we've got partners in the marketplace that are better than I at helping you sit down and fix and repair the credit. So there are some specialists out there that can help out.
So for clarity as well, if I'm a Canadian, doesn't matter where I'm in Canada, BC, Ontario, like Saskatchewan, wherever, Scott Westlake and your team, you guys can help facilitate that, correct?
Yeah, we can do anything in Canada, any province, and we can do anything in the US as well, right? We naturally have partners on our team, both locally, and we have partners in some of those geographical locations, not all of them. So like really just like anything in business, it's figuring out like who your customer is, what their needs are. Like someone living in Toronto that wants to work with someone in Toronto that's buying in the US or another province might feel more comfortable working with someone in Toronto. It's easy to meet, it's easy to connect. If someone's buying, in a different location, wants like boots on the ground, and they want to talk to someone like locally, then that's a little bit different, right? And we try to connect them with someone locally. So like ultimately, like success in our industry is driven from like your customers' needs and what are they looking for. And so I think part of like the intake or the initial call with any customer is figuring out what do they need, right? And if they want to work, digitally, we can do that. If they want to meet, we can meet. If they want to do a Zoom, we do a Zoom. So it's just really figuring out like what are their needs and then helping out. But yeah, to answer the question most simply, anywhere in Canada or the US, we could do it, or we could find someone that can do it for you for sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Scott, tell us what is coming up on the horizon for you, and what is the best way for people to be able to connect with you?
Like, so for us, so like we're like, there's a few different things. I mean, for the company, like the brokerage, it's always bringing in good people that need mentorship and support, and maybe, don't know how to grow their career the same way that we do, or have the same experiences or lender relationships or partnerships. And so, part of it from a team perspective is like bringing in the right brokers and agents and helping them have a successful career. That's one thing we're passionate about. We're up to 400 agents, and we want to continue to grow that. And, I think we're the biggest, if not one of the biggest teams in the country. And it's because we have this passion to help other brokers succeed. So that's one thing we're doing. As an active broker, like someone like myself who's a bit of a deal junkie and like likes to get in there and get my hands dirty and do business. Like I obviously have certain deals I like to do and deals that I don't, but I love talking with people and building relationships. So, there's certain deals that come in like more in the niche side that I like to spend a lot of my time on. And I actually personally write those loans. If, it's say a first time home buyer, they really need someone to hold their hand. Like I'm not at that stage of my career, that takes a certain personality, but we've got great people that help out. And I'd love to do the first phone call with those first-time home buyers, like give them that confidence and let them know what we're about. But, I'll assign someone to that file or assign a couple people to that file, similar to real estate, to make sure that they're getting everything they need during that process. And then, there's the Fund magazine that I talked about that I'm super excited about that because it's a marketing tool for mortgage brokers that isn't all, it sounds digital and like electronic, but the core ethos of that is to build strong community connections, partnerships, and relationships, which is what, I think a big emphasis of this podcast was about, right? And so that's what I'm super excited about, is to help other brokers succeed through that platform. And to connect with me, easiest way is just to send me an email. It hasn't changed in a long time. It's just like Scott, my name, at Westlake, my last name, Westlake team.com. So Scott at the Westlake team.com. If an email goes there, hits my inbox, and myself or someone on the team grabs it, and we can figure it out from there.
I love it. And we'll put
ScottWestlake.com. If you go to the website, that's maybe easier. ScottWestlake.com. What am I doing? See? There you go.
No, that's okay. And I'm going to put it all in the show notes as well. So you can make sure to click below and you'll be able to connect with Scott. Scott, before I let you go, always so great to connect. And I'm really grateful to have you come on the podcast. I always love ending with this question. When you think about being the CEO of your life, so not your business, about your life, how has owning your decisions brought you freedom?
So I missed the last part there. How has
owning your decisions, so like being the CEO over your decisions, how has that brought you freedom?
I mean, it's everything, right? Like you got to make decisions. Sometimes you've got time to think, and sometimes you got to shoot from the hip, right? And you need to know that when you're running your own business and you're the CEO of your own life, whether it's personal or business, you're going to make decisions, good or bad, and you got to stick with it and go with it. So I think it's super important to just, make sure you understand like, what you're passionate about, what your belief system is, and try to make decisions that just align with the direction you want to go in, and don't look back. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to succeed and you're going to fail, right? But just sometimes shooting from the hip is the best way to go, and figure out the rest later.
I love it. Great way. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We'll do it again soon.
Yes.
Awesome.
We can do that for sure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shae and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.